Well, it's hello from him,
Richard Moore, and it's hello from her,
Michelle Monroe. Well, here we are again. And of course, last month, in fact, the 13th of May, saw the 69th edition of the Eurovision Song Contest. But I'm not sure whether our listeners know that prior to Eurovision, the BBC hosted a Song for Europe, and they changed tactics from previous years by guaranteeing the entrant a spot in Eurovision. And they felt by offering the bribe, it would be easier to secure a top name to take part. So in 1964, their choice was Daddy. And he'd been working for the BBC for 7 years, from his first television appearance with the show band back in 1957, as well as hundreds of guest spots and his own show. Now, he wasn't a stranger to the process of a song contest. Even though he'd lost out to Mike Preston in ITV's British Song Contest, it was Dad's entry, which was My Kind of Girl, that climbed the charts, giving him his second top 5 hit, leaving the winning entry, Marry Me, trailing behind in the number 14 spot.
Yeah, let's just have a little bit of a listen to a little bit of Marry Me and a little bit of My Kind of Girl.
Let's have a fling time, pretend it's springtime, when lambs in the park go on a spree, blossoms bud in the apple tree, and you will marry me.
And her hair has a kind of curl. To my mind, she's my kind of girl.
How Marry Me was considered a better song, I really don't know. I mean, I'll leave that to you, the listeners, to judge for yourselves. But Matt was supposed to be releasing the song Come a Star as a single. At that point, it was already ready. There was already made some promo copies. They'd been pressed. And as soon as George Martin heard My Kind of Girl, he threw that song out and thought, no, that's the hit. And he rushed him into the studio, which was on February the 18th, 1961, and taped the song so he could get it out almost immediately. It's a fantastic recording and a fantastic song. And really, I don't feel personally, and I know we're biased, I really don't feel there's any comparison. So I have a feeling that it was back in those days, you see, you had a jury who came up with the winners of these things rather than the phone entries that you have these days. And so I reckon it was the jury who thought that Marry Me was the more commercial song. Wrong?
Yeah, absolutely wrong. Well, you know, the original concept of one singer performing all the chosen songs was so that the judges couldn't be influenced by the personality of the singer, so they'd concentrate on the song itself. Well, now Daddy was eager to perform in the contest because he lost out on the opportunity a few years prior due to mismanagement. So the BBC had a willing victim. In January, Daddy signed the paperwork guaranteeing him, listen to this, a total of 450 guineas plus expenses for both contests. Wonder what that translates to money today.
Well, I've done a quick calculation, and apparently 450 guineas is equal to £8,333 and 24p. Let's not forget the 24p.
Yeah. Well, he was allowed to select his preferred writers from a list supplied by the Songwriters Guild of Great Britain, and he invited each to submit a new number for him to sing. And all the writers selected by Daddy were at the top of their profession and had written some really good songs. So Lionel Bart submitted Choose, Norman Newell, It's Funny How You Know, Tony Hatch, I Love the Little Things, Mitch Murray, I've Got the Moon on My Side, Leslie Bricusse, 10 out of 10, and Hal Shaper with Beautiful, Beautiful.
Yeah, and here's a little clip of all of those songs.
There are glad songs, there are sad songs. Choose, my darling, choose. When you walk down the street and you suddenly meet someone sweet and you whisper hello, then you know, yes, you know. Oh, it's funny how you know. Oh, I love the little things you say, and I love the little things you do. For tonight I've got the moon on my side. You haven't got a chance, and there is nothing you can do that'll love me. 8, because you're great, my love. 9, because you're mine, my love. And 10 out of 10, because you love me. Mr. Beat, oh, you're beautiful, beautiful, wonderful, wonderful, marvelous, marvelous too.
Now, some of you may notice that actually, they're not necessarily the recordings you would expect to hear of those songs. Those are actually from a recording of the Song for Europe show that was hosted by David Jacobs. Some years ago, there was a lovely lady who was one of Matt's greatest fans called Sue Parker, or Sue Maul as she was in her younger days. And she unfortunately passed away, and she bequeathed all of her Matt collection of press cuttings and all sorts of stuff, reel-to-reel tapes. And there was some of the tapes she'd sent to me before to transfer, but we found some tapes that even Sue had forgotten about amongst them. And when I transferred those, I was astonished to hear a pretty much complete recording of the Song for Europe. It was just recorded with a microphone in front of the speaker, you know how a lot of people did then, but it was listenable to, and it was really good to have. And then a couple of years ago, a gentleman by the name of Gordon Roxburgh contacted me, and he said that he had another version, but this was an inline recording, which means that it was taken as a direct recording from the TV. It's only the songs rather than all of the show, but as you can hear, it's quite reasonable quality. It's quite reasonable to hear. So thank you very much to Gordon, if you're out there listening, for actually finding that, because you never know what's hidden away.
No, you don't. Well, I mean, we're always grateful for whatever anyone finds and sends in. I mean, that's how we've managed to get what we've got, you know. But
yes, absolutely.
And, well, David Jacobs was the BBC's choice to compare Song for Europe and to commentate the Eurovision in Copenhagen. And in an interview published shortly after the 64 show, he singled out Matt Monro as his favourite male vocalist, and they remained staunch friends throughout their lives.
Yeah, and it's interesting. That's another thing that was lost to the years. David's commentary. There's been a recording that's been around for a very, very long time of the show, and it's a direct feed of the contests. You hear the compare and you hear all the songs. It is a really good recording. It was probably made by the TV company, and who knows why. We haven't got a clue. I mean, it may be that copies were given to the people who entered, which Matt certainly had a copy of it at some point. Who knows, the version that's out there might even have come from his tape. In the 1980s, all of his reel tapes were sent to EMI to be copied from reel to cassette. And so, who knows, somebody could have said, oh, this is rare, I'll take a copy of this. And then it's been his version that's been flying around ever since. Anyway, we'll never know. But once again, Gordon Roxburgh has come to our aid, and he's actually found a copy of the whole show with David Jacobs' commentary. Once again, it's not brilliant quality, but it's nice to have. It's nice to hear how it was broadcast actually in our country. And if you go and look for the clip that we put up on our YouTube, you can actually hear a little bit of David Jacobs' commentary on there.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Sorry, back to Song for Europe.
Well, rehearsals took place on, the 4th and 5th of February at an unknown location, and then on the 6th in the television theatre Shepherd's Bush, from where the show was broadcast live the following night. Now, Dad was required to attend on all 3 days, as well as a photo call on Thursday afternoon. Each song was allocated a 40-minute rehearsal period, and at 8, Dad was required for a 2-hour camera rehearsal of all 6 songs. The orchestra and choir were absent, and the tracks were played on record instead. I mean, it was gruelling. It wasn't like just go in and sing the songs, you know. It was sort of days and days of graft.
I just wonder whether that could have been what was known as the Acton Hilton that he did the rehearsals to on the 4th and the 5th, which was the BBC rehearsal rooms that were right next to which were next to Television Centre, and it was a fairly rough and ready place apparently, but it was given the nickname the Acton Hilton by various people like Morecambe and Wise and the two Ronnies and people like that who rehearsed there. So who knows? It
Possible,
might have been that.
yeah. And, well, once Dad had sung the last song on the night, 7 minutes were allocated for the voting, and David Jacobs' explanation of the procedure that preceded it. And with the voting finally over and the scores verified, I Love the Little Things by Tony Hatch was declared the overall winner. Dad reprised the winning song at the end of the show, and once the transmission was over, he attended a photo call and press conference with one very bemused Hatch, he couldn't believe that he'd won.
You did enter the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah.
And for the life of me, I had 5 people who know you, not personally, but know you very well. We couldn't think of the song.
Well, there were 2 contests I did, actually. There was the Eurovision Song Contest.
That was the one we couldn't think
I
of.
Love the Little Things by Tony Hatch and Jackie Trent.
That's right.
I love the little things.
Yeah. Do you know, I know it's very embarrassing because...
That's all right. I've forgotten it as well. I think we all have, especially the public.
An EP disc of all 6 songs, simply entitled A Song for Europe, was released shortly after the programme aired, and many people were surprised to discover that the single failed to chart. But this had nothing to do with the song itself, merely the fact that the single was released after the EP. So the extended play reached number 16 in the charts, so few people were inclined to buy the 7-inch as well.
Yes, but what people probably didn't know was that they weren't actually getting the full song if they bought the EP. Because Matt recorded 6 songs at Abbey Road in 2 different sessions. So there was a bit of a break in between. He recorded 2 in the morning and 4 in the afternoon of the 6 songs on the 19th of January 1964. And all of those songs for the EP release were edited down to around about 2 minutes each so that they could fit all of them on one EP. Okay, so yeah, if you'd bought the EP, you were missing a bit of these songs. You were missing a verse out of each of the songs at least. But George, thankfully, good old George Martin, was forward-thinking enough to actually archive full versions of the songs, so that I was able to find these. About 15 years ago it probably was. I was able to get hold of those, and we were able to put them out on Matt Uncovered, the Rare and Monroe, which is the first time 4 of those had been heard in full. Of course, the 2 of them had been released on single.
Yeah, well, it's amazing what the record companies did, because, you remember that album you did, The Alternative, or
yes.
The Alternate, because there were different versions of so many different songs, weren't there?
That's right. I mean,
in the EMI archives.
We were very lucky, because there's a lot of artists out there that weren't so lucky. We were very lucky that so many of your dad's session reels still exist, that we were able to take these things from. I'm working on a set at the moment of another EMI artist, and I won't say who at this precise moment in time because I'm not supposed to. And 1 session tape. They recorded for EMI for 7 years, and 1 session tape remains, and that's it. Nothing else, so We've been really lucky of how much of your dad still survived in the archives.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to be honest, he was one of EMI Gold's biggest sellers. I mean, I think they knew that they sort of had gold on their hand in one way, and because they kept releasing songs. I mean, we were doing 3 albums a year after he died.
Yes, absolutely. And, to get yourself, just 30 years after you died, ending up in number 8 in the charts with Stranger in Paradise. I mean, who'd think of it,
Well, no, and plus the initial CD is brand new. Nobody'd ever heard it.
No, absolutely.
And then it was because it was 30 years after Daddy passed, we both decided that we'd do a second disc of all the hits for any newbies, any sort of new fans that had come along who maybe weren't au fait with all the hits that he had produced.
Yes, and from what I've heard, not long after, between physical copies and downloads, it had sold 25,000 copies. So that's not bad going, really, for somebody who's not been around for 30 years.
No, it isn't. Well, plus there was very little publicity, of course.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, who knows what it could have sold if it hadn't been issued the week before COVID lockdown. But there you go.
Well, this is the thing. When it was released, I mean, literally all the shelves in the supermarkets were empty because the stock they had, had been sold immediately.
Yeah.
And then nobody could get more stock because of lockdown.
Mm.
And that was the thing. We got to number 8, where, in fact, I was dying to know whether we'd beat Dad's highest entry of number 5. And, of course, we'll never know because nobody could get any copies up on the second week.
Absolutely.
And that took weeks for it to sort of get back to, well, I won't say normal, but, as normal as it was going to get back then.
Yeah, I think actually it went out of stock pretty much everywhere and wasn't available for about a month at one point. So.
Yeah, and the sad thing about it was that it was originally going to come out much earlier. And then Universal decided that there was something else it would clash with and moved it. And, of course, that was really not the right decision in retrospect.
No, yeah, but as I say, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Who'd have known about...
Well, talking about discs, and in the single now, a big row brewed that split the record industry, and it was over the single released by EMI after Song for Europe. It meant that the composer's royalties for the B-side would go to the man whose song was judged bottom in the competition. Now, the choice of the single coupling, which was composed by EMI recording manager Norman Newell and Phil Green, caused a great deal of controversy, and a storm blew up over their choice instead of the contest runner-up. The New Musical Express described it as one of the most heated controversies in the music business for years, and said that most of the criticism was aimed at Norman Newell, implying that the real reason why his song was chosen over the runner-up was his connection to EMI, because he was a recording manager at the record company, so people felt that was the only reason the song came to be on the B-side of Dad's release, instead of the runner-up Mitch Murray's song, I've Got the Moon on My Side. And Dad was disgusted. I mean, he thought it not only an insult to Mitch Murray, but to the songwriting profession and to the general public.
Yeah, and I mean, it wasn't an isolated event either. I mean, Norrie Paramore used to do it a lot, and even George Martin, I think eventually became sort of, if you can't beat him, join him, and started doing some of it himself. But I suppose you can't blame him in some ways, because there was no such thing as a royalty, a producer's royalty back then. So all you got was a salary from the record company. No matter how well your record sold, you made nothing extra from them. So I suppose it was seen as a way to actually generate a little bit of extra income from you from the songwriter royalties. And although George at least didn't try to put George Martin all over the labels like Norman Newell did, he actually used a pseudonym of Graham Fisher. So if you ever see any songs produced by George, written by a Graham Fisher, or even just Fisher, it might just say on the label, that is George himself writing under a pseudonym. But all of this came to a bit of a head around the same time, because it was noticed by David Frost. And he even brought this up and made a big thing about it in an edition of That Was the Week That Was, talking about record producers earning money from their own compositions on releases and on B-sides particularly. I'll see if I can dig that out.
Why not?
Norrie Paramore, age 48. For 10 years, artist and repertoire manager of Columbia Records. The man who not only chooses the singer, but also chooses a song. What more natural in such a position of power that he should so often choose one of his own? Rarely played, and yet nice touch this, receiving half the royalties.
Well, instead of flying out, which would have been the 17th of March to Copenhagen for the Eurovision, Dad was recovering from a road accident after his white Ford Galaxy was in a collision with the Jaguar in the Edgware Road. He wasn't badly hurt, but he suffered from shock so he didn't fly out. In fact, he was 2 days late. Well, of course, Eurovision is now cited as being the most watched non-sporting event in the world, drawing around 500 million worldwide broadcasts, both on television and, of course, the ever-growing internet. It's consistently showcased popular music on an annual basis for over half a century. But the event didn't start with quite the same grand auspices. The first competition in '56 had just 7 entries, each submitting 2 songs each, and was broadcast from a tiny platform in Switzerland in front of a studio audience of just 200 people. And that was the only year that more than 1 song per country was allowed. Now, the UK, Denmark and Austria were all disqualified before the contest as they failed to announce their representative before the deadline. Had England filed their paperwork in a timely manner, this would have been their entry.
Everybody falls in love with someone. Why won't someone fall in love with me? I'm tired of being lonely and walking by myself. Why won't someone come along and take me off the shelf?
And of course, you might well notice that there was a particularly well-known singer singing that one. Not that he would have actually been the entrant on the actual contest, though, but he did get to later record it for Decca.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a shame. It was a good song. And not only was Britain missing from the lineup, but there was also no English songs in the equation, and voting records were kept sealed. 2 judges from each competing country voted for their favourite songs. Luxembourg Television was unable to send 2 judges to Lugano because of a dire financial crisis, so they asked the Swiss to cast their vote. Well, the first seeds of doubt about the voting procedures were cast when the Swiss entry won the event. Not political at all.
No.
And it wasn't until 1957 that the UK sent a representative, and entrant Patricia Bredon went down in the history books, not for winning the event, but for performing the shortest ever entry at just 1 minute and 52 seconds.
Short but sweet.
Our turn to host the event came in 1960 at the Royal Festival Hall, with Norway making its first appearance. And each year saw new arrivals, and with the participation of Spain, Finland and Yugoslavia in 1961, the event saw 16 songs in the final. Well, 16 nations came to Copenhagen to compete on the 21st of March in 1964, although there was one change to the final lineup, because industrial action by the Musicians' Union meant that Sweden was unable to compete. Portugal, a newcomer to the competition, took their place, but scored 0 points, as did Germany and Switzerland. Now, of course, once the interval was over and all the points calculated, the presenter called upon each voting country in turn and invited them to announce the results of their vote. The announcements were made over telephone lines, with the audio piped into the concert hall for the audience to hear, and over the television or radio transmission. The points were then displayed on a scoreboard on the side of the stage. Now, of course, as technology progressed, the outmoded system was superseded in 1988, I think it was, by an electronic depiction that could be displayed on the television screen. Now, in England, Mummy had taken my brother, baby Matthew's carry-cot into the office with her to watch the programme, as she thought it would bring Daddy luck. Now, I, of course, Daddy's most faithful of fans, sat for several minutes staring suspiciously at the screen. I approached it, peered closely into Daddy's face, heaved a sigh of disgust and stamped off to find something that made more sense to me, as I couldn't understand why I could see Daddy, but he wasn't really there. So that was my first experience of Daddy on the TV. Well, despite his excellent presentation with the only English language performance of the night, he finished a distant runner-up. The winner of the 1964 Eurovision contest was the youngest contestant, 16-year-old Gigliola Cinquetti, representing Italy with the song Non ho l'età.
Non ho l'età, non ho l'età per amarti, non ho l'età.
Well, as so many of Dad's performances, there's no archival film of the recording, the only one missing, apart from the inaugural contest, as well as the historic loss of the 64 performance, which was the first broadcast to be interrupted by a protester. So subsequent to the Swiss entry, a man who had been hiding backstage disguised as a stagehand spectacularly strolled on carrying a banner bearing the legend "Boycott Franco and Salazar," referring to the dictators governing Spain and Portugal at the time. The camera only captured a few moments of the demo before the director cut to a shot of the scoreboard. I'd like to have seen that.
Yes, and there's been other attempts since, hasn't there, at things like that?
Oh, yeah. And recently.
Yes, absolutely. And it's a shame. I mean, there's so little of it survives. Some bits do survive. Obviously, we've got the audio recording that I spoke about earlier. And there's lots of photographs, some of which we've put a sort of reconstruction that somebody very kindly put together for us of your dad singing with photographs taken on the night. But
and of course, Daddy took cine footage himself.
Indeed, there's some cine footage, yes, which we've also included, yes. And there's a clip of the winning entry from two different sources. There's actual from the broadcast, and there's the newsreel who were there on the same night captured it as well. But the rest of it, nobody knows what's happened to it. The master copy that was made by Danish television was reported to have been destroyed in a fire. I don't know how true that is, but that's what's said. But extraordinarily, not one of the other TV stations who broadcast the show seem to have kept a copy at all. There have been rumours for years that there's somebody somewhere who has footage. There was rumours that somebody in Malta had a copy of it, and there's none of these things ever come to fruition. So if you know anything different, if you know that actually, I've got a canister stuck in my shed of the 1964 Eurovision Song Contest, please do let us know, because that will be the only one that there is.
Yeah, it's sad, really, because there's so much of Daddy's stuff. His first Royal Command and so many things missing.
You can bet that if there's one edition of a show that your dad appeared in that's missing, it will be the one that your dad was in. If you see what I mean. Yeah, it's always your dad's edition that's missing. Morecambe and Wise, hardly anything missing of Morecambe and Wise. The one where your dad did a sketch. Not there.
Well, funny enough, it was on television the other night, more lost footage, and I was like, oh, yes, and no.
Yeah, I know. We live in hope, don't we? Yeah.
We do. Well, I mean, there been some huge names entering this competition, from Cliff Richard, Sandy Shaw, Lulu did it, The Shadows, ABBA, and Celine Dion, just to name a few. But although all of them were excited to perform for their country, several voiced their disappointment. Johnny Logan and Conchita Wurst said they would never do the contest again. Dad thought it too political, and Michael Ball actually said he would rather stick pins in his eyes than repeat the experience. So it would seem Eurovision is a little like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it.
Yes, and I'm somewhat of the latter side of that, unfortunately, but there you go.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't bother anymore, which is sad. I mean, I know people go nuts over it.
Absolutely.
But it's just too much controversy, too much political rubbish, and the voting system, to my mind, is just not fair.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But there you go.
That's just my view, and I'm sure all of you out there will be yelling at me saying,
more than likely, yes.
But we're all entitled to our opinion, whether you like it or not.
But we mustn't forget, of course, and we haven't mentioned this, that, of course, Walk Away comes from the 1964 Eurovision Song Contest, because your dad heard Udo Jürgens singing
his was
that.
the Austrian entry on the night, and Dad absolutely loved it, and he went up to Udo and asked him if he could take it back to England and have it translated, and of course that became one of his biggest hits.
And, of course, your dad enjoyed the songs of Udo to such an extent that there was various other ones that he sang as well. I mean, If I Never Sing Another Song is one of Udo's, and there's Merci, Chérie, Merci, and there's a couple of other ones as well that were all Udo Jürgens songs. So your dad really liked his stuff as well. So I assume that they knew each other quite well in the end, did they?
Yeah, when I do my talks on the ships, I say about Udo, and I say... the song, and I say, does anyone know what it is in English? And nobody ever knows. The answer is Walk Away.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah.
It is funny. But there you go.
Indeed.
Anyway, I think that's enough of me for tonight.
Oh, it's probably
or for
enough
the
of
afternoon
me.
or the morning, whenever you're listening to it.
Yes.
I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, we are getting there a bit.
Yeah, we're sort of falling into the routine of doing it now. Yeah, it's a strange thing to sit here and just to chat to a microphone whilst one of us is in Telford and one of us is in Lancashire. But there you go, we're getting there. But of course, if you want to get in contact with us, if you want to tell us how brilliant we are, of course. We've got the email system set up so that anybody who wants to tell us how bad we are automatically goes into spam. But still,
yeah, don't want to hear it.
if you happen to want to speak to us about anything at all to do with the podcast, to do about what you want to talk about a story, about questions, absolutely anything you like. We are happy to answer those questions if we possibly can, and the way to do that is contact us via the email address pod@mattmonroe.com, and I got it right. What is it, Michelle?
It's pod@mattmonroe.com.
That's the one. Now, I should also mention that we're now on Spotify and all the other podcast platforms, and if any of them happen to have a review section, it would be wonderful if you could put a little review up there, maybe 5 stars. It would be really nice if you could manage that. But if you could leave us a review and just a little bit about the show, it might help a few more listeners to find us. And we will see you next month.
All right. Bye-bye, Richard.
Bye-bye.